Now, okay, so if anybody wants to go over anything or somebody they know that wasn't able to attend, then we can share it with them as well. Okay, so what we're going to do tonight is I brought like a few different kinds of pasta, whole wheat. I've got a durum, which is not really a full whole wheat pasta, and then I've got a high protein pasta. And we're gonna talk about how to prepare these pastas. No, I'm just joking. Even though it's pasta party, I know everybody loves pasta. We're going to talk about the nitty gritty and really getting to race day in proper shape. Um, and okay, so I've been doing a number of webinars talking around sports nutrition the last couple of weeks. Maybe some of you have already attended. Some people have possibly seen them because we did upload them to our YouTube channel online. But I think it would be very important to do this evening with a number of things. Firstly, I'm just going to do a short recap and summary of possibly what we've discussed in the past, because I think it is quite important. So I'm just going to go over that pretty quickly, just a couple of slides. There are a number of questions that have been asked. I'm going to go into those as well, and then I'll just open it up for a Q&A. Less than 2 weeks to Comrades. I'm sure nerves are kicking in. I have seen some questions. Some people have got niggles, not sure how to address it, etc. But we'll try and get to everything. Make sure that you get to race day healthy. Sorry, I actually did end up getting a cold. First time in a very long time. So there are some viruses running around, but yeah, I think the key thing right now is to try and avoid crowds as much as possible. Okay, so I'm just going to get started. I'm going to go through the slides. One of the questions I always get asked is around nutrition feeding strategy, and I have touched on this. Comrades is a very long day, and I just want to re-stress that I think it's very important to make sure that you understand the volume of carbohydrates that you're going to be taking in on an hourly basis. I have had a lot of people telling me that they take one snap gel an hour or they take this gel every hour, etc. And unfortunately, that is a very insufficient amount of fuel to fuel a race that could be anywhere between, and I'm just averaging out 8 to 12 hours, for example, depending on the kind of runner you are. So when it comes to long distance events, especially endurance events, the key to me is trying to get as close to a gram of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight. But if you're looking at sports nutrition guidelines, I'd say anywhere around the 60, 50 to 70 gram mark per an hour would be more than sufficient. I think 30 grams, 40 grams per an hour is too little to take in a race of this nature. So first thing, make sure that you do know the volume of carbohydrates you're going to be taking in on an hourly basis. And you need to split that up into 30-minute feeds. So 20 to 30-minute feeds, but if it's 30 grams of carbs every half an hour, that will give you your 60 grams per hour. Don't go have 60 grams only on the 60 minutes. Rather split your 60 grams into two 30-gram feeds, and that would be way better. It's much better on the digestive system from an absorption point of view. It means you can take in a little bit less fluid to help with pull through. Stay also properly hydrated, and you're also not going to get so sick of these kind of products if you're taking in large amounts at any one point in time. Okay. A lot of people said to me, how do you determine the volume of carbohydrates that you should be taking hourly? And obviously, it's a process. I developed a tipping point method many years ago where you start off with a nominal amount of carbs, whether it's 20, 30, or 40 grams per hour. And session after session, you can slowly increase that volume incrementally over time and see what that level is that provides you gastrointestinal comfort. Obviously, if you overreach on the carbohydrate intake side, you can cause GI distress, which is not something that is desirable. And sometimes I've mentioned in the past, it's not just about the volume of carbohydrates that you're taking in on an hourly basis, but also the composition of those carbohydrates you take in an hourly basis. So just to give you a simple idea, the gels are structured in a way to maximize absorption. They maximize the two channels, which is glucose and fructose channel. Glucose is capable of 60 gram absorption or processing per an hour. Fructose channel around 30 grams. For people that want to go over 90 grams per an hour, there are other ratios that could possibly look at, like 1 to 1 or 0.8 to 1, or even 2 to 1. It really depends on what a person is capable of consuming and what is sitting comfortably with them. There's no real proven science as far as the ratios go, a lot more work needs to be done in those spaces. So most important is you understand what that tipping point is. So what is the maximum amount of carbohydrate you can ingest without causing issues? That's the number that you look at when it comes to race day. That's your optimal feed. Okay. If I'm talking about drip feeding, and at Comrades, if we have a look here, I've got here a multi-hour system of drip feeding. Fuel dispenser can be anything. It can be a soft flask, which some people haven't put a concentrate in. It could be a gel, could be drink mixes at the tables, could be banana, potatoes en route, plus gels. It could be a combination of things that you're looking at. And often when I look at nutrition plans, there's really like a lot of different products that people put in through the day. Because some people get sick of certain flavors and tastes, and they really look at to adhering to their nutrition strategy, but to not get tied down and feel nauseous. And we'll talk about nausea and stuff like that a little bit later. But if you're looking at a multi-hour system or drip fueling, which, like I mentioned, is about 20 to 40-minute intervals, but I'd say 30-minute intervals are optimal. Then you're looking at a medium to high intake. You're definitely not looking at a low intake for a race like Comrades. It is a big day out, and you certainly do need to make sure that you take in enough energy in the form of carbohydrates to support your day. So we would look only at the green, which is 60 grams, around 240 calories of energy per hour. And then red, if you're going 90 grams, you're talking about 360 calories per hour. But you can see that 240 calories per hour equates to what you would take every 40 minutes if you were going with a higher amount. So just remember, the frequency of the fueling is very different when you start to go a lot higher on the carbohydrate intake side of things. A lot of people ask me, what does this mean from a product perspective? I haven't put other brands up here, but this will just give you an idea. And I'm looking only at the 60-gram column. So Race Pro Energy Bar, you'd need to eat the whole bar every 25 minutes to get in 60 grams. You'd need to eat a half a Race Pro gel every 38 minutes, or maybe a third, sort of every 25 minutes or so. Snap gel, one every 22 minutes will give you 60 grams per hour. Sports Chew bar, one every 30 minutes. A whole bar every 30 minutes will give you 60 grams per hour, just over, because they're 32 grams a bar. A scoop of Endure drink every 22 minutes. 3 tablets of chewable tabs every 15 minutes. So that's basically 12 tablets an hour. And then Race Pro drink would be 1.5 scoops every 25 minutes, or race drink would be 1.5 scoops every 34 minutes. So that will give you an idea of like how products are broken down into timing of feed. If you have a look at the 90-gram column, you'll see this crosses. Why? Not all products are very supportive or digestive friendly when you're going to very high amounts of carbohydrate intake. The composition of certain carbohydrates, I would say, can be limited. So like if I look at our snap gels, I'd say for me, 75 grams would be the cutoff. To get to 90, I use a different product. I'd probably go the Race Pro gel instead. And basically, Race Pro Energy Bar would be one every 17 minutes. So it's 3 bars in under an hour. And then the crosses are not conducive to taking in 90 grams of carbs per hour. And then Race Pro Energy drink, 2 scoops every 22 minutes. Race drink, 2 scoops every 30 minutes. So that will give you an idea of how you break down a product into a feeding strategy. And I'm not saying that it has to be like this, because you could go with a Race Pro gel or a normal gel. You could take it at 22 minutes, and then maybe at 45 or 50 minutes, or maybe 25 minutes later, you decide, okay, well, now I'm going to have a half a banana. And then you carry on going, and then you have another gel, and then you have a half a potato or whatever it is. So you can mix, but the most important thing is don't mix everything at once. You need to keep the nutrition staggered in order that it gets broken down and utilized. You don't want to land up making a soup mix, and it's something that I've mentioned in the next slide, because if you do create a soup, you take a fast absorbing carbohydrate with a slow absorbing carbohydrate, and you try and mix them together, you're going to get conflict. If you try and mix certain products together which shouldn't be mixed together, and you get that conflict, you're going to land up with probably some form of gastrointestinal distress. So soup mixes are a very bad idea on the day. Never panic when it comes to nutrition. It doesn't matter from an energy perspective how you are taking in, but the volume and the timing and keeping those items separate is so important. Okay. When it comes to hydration and energy, always keep them separate. So quickly on hydration, make sure that you are sipping frequently. I have mentioned this before. Water on its own is not very well absorbed. It is limited in how well the pull-through rate is of fluid, just if it's in the form of plain water. And that gastric emptying is very limited. The way to improve gastric emptying is to actually have an isotonic or a hypertonic solution, so more of a mineral-based or energy solution. So that would be way better than having water on its own. A lot of people drink water on its own and they think, oh, well, I'm just hydrating. But you're not actually hydrating, because hydration is actually a measure of what is being pulled through and actually going intracellular. If you're just drinking water, like a blocked drain, it really takes a while to empty. And most of the time, a lot of people just land up filling up their bladder, etc., or putting stress on the kidneys. The stuff's not being pulled into the system. And so salt and carbohydrates are your friend when it comes to proper hydration. But salt specifically, obviously, translates to sodium. And sodium definitely does help maximize fluid absorption. So whether you're taking salt tablets, whether you're eating something that's salty, whether you're taking a Krampus salt gel, which is a electrolyte or salt gel, or any other form of high sodium mineral solution, that is way better than consuming water on its own. In the beginning, you might not battle at all, because obviously you start in cooler temperatures. But as you start to run after an hour or two and your core body temperature starts to heat up, and then daytime temperature starts to heat up, core body temperature actually starts to heat up even more. Blood is definitely diverted away from the digestive tracts towards the surface of the skin, where the sweating mechanism takes place to cool your engine. And it does result in a much higher loss of fluid as the day gets longer and you keep on performing. Eventually, depending on the height, the weight, the surface area of an individual, all these things can play a role, as well as external temperatures can play a role in the amount of fluid that's lost. And I mean, you can get some people that are losing 1 to 1.2 liters of fluid per an hour. There's no way to be able to replenish that exact amount, but you would try and aim for like a 70 to 80% replenishment. And if you try to do that with water on its own, there's no ways you will succeed. You would definitely need, I would suggest, a hypertonic or an isotonic solution to help maximize that fluid absorption. Okay. There's no problem with rinsing your mouth out or just a tiny little bit of water here or there. And remember, energy products such as gels, such as bars, chews, etc., they do have sodium in, they do have carbohydrates in. And so consuming water with them in a way does convert what's in your stomach to a little bit more of a isotonic solution and can help with better pull through. So if you take a gel, make sure you do take some water with a gel to maximize the pull through of the energy and to help maximize fluid pull through. If people taking concentrated forms of energy and they don't hydrate sufficiently, the digestive system is left under quite a bit of stress. There's a high concentrate of glucose sitting in the gut. And what happens is it just slowly begins to ferment as it moves down into the sort of lower duodenum area, into the digestive tracts. And that fermentation process can lead to gas, to bloating, to discomfort, cramping. And then sometimes you get what's called reverse pull through, where now fluid is needed to be pulled back into the digestive system to help with the breaking down process. And that can also leave you in a bit of a dehydrated state. So it's very important to have a balance between energy and obviously to balance your hydration. And just make sure that you're doing it frequently. You're not overdoing it, but you're certainly not underdoing it. And if you balance it out over small amounts of energy frequently and small amounts of fluid frequently, I think you'll have a much better day out. Don't wait for it to be too late. You've got a trigger mechanism, which is called thirst. If that starts to trigger, you better listen to it quickly. Don't even carry on running, because if you do, and you do land up in a dehydrated state, it is going to either fatigue you severely, because it does lead to fatigue. It can lead to nausea, okay? And it can also lead to the onset of muscle cramping. The science is not completely understood around the triggers, but generally excessive fluid loss can lead to cramping, and I've seen that a lot over the years. Okay. How do you know if you're overhydrated? Washing machine effect. You feel fluid sloshing around in your gut. You can hear it, you can feel it, you can actually hear that noise. It's not being diluted. Stop drinking. Take in some carbs, take in some salt, let it be pulled through, and then carry on rehydrating afterwards. But don't keep hydrating because you're actually doing your system a disservice, and it can be dangerous if you completely overhydrate and you dilute your sodium levels in your blood plasma. It's not something you want to do. That can lead to the onset of hyponatremia. It's not a very common thing, but it can occur, which is an overload. And it's dehydration. You can never put yourself at risk, severe risk, when you dehydrate because there's a quick cure. But overhydration, you're putting yourself at severe risk. We discussed fueling with the protein. I think it's very important to take in the form of protein on the day. Just remember, protein only breaks down at 9 to 12 grams per an hour. So don't go overeat protein, but it does help mitigate the onset of or symptomatic onset of gluconeogenesis, which can cause muscle fatigue. It also does help stabilize blood sugar. It can take away that sugary or sweet taste, depending on what the source of protein is. But I personally am a big advocate of protein, and our elite athletes consume quite a large amount of protein carbs combination on Comrades route. So just keep that in mind. If you're not able to take with you on route small amounts, then at least have a protein shake waiting at maybe certain points, like 35 to 40 or 45 to 50, and then maybe another one at 60. So maybe 2 or 3 points en route that you can take in a normal amount, which will actually help you feel a lot better. When I get asked about biltong, the reason that people tend to feel better is because of the salt, not because of the energy or the protein. It's really because of the salt. It helps with fluid pull through. It maximizes your hydration status. So from a salt perspective, yes, absolutely, that will work. That's not going to be converted into a source of energy anytime quickly. Okay. Right, let's talk about the week before race day. And then I'm going to get into some of these questions that were sent through. Always keep it clean. So don't eat things that you are intolerant to. If you're lactose intolerant, avoid dairy. If you're fiber intolerant, keep the fiber, to a minimum. There's a lot of things that people consume the week before race day and can actually set you up for a bit of irritable bowel or some sign of a digestive issue. It's the last thing you need, especially with pre-race nerves kicking in. Everything is a lot more sensitive, especially around the digestive system. And people that suffer from digestive disorders like irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, etc. These are all forms of like IBS, and these diseases are very much brought on by stress. So stress does definitely play a role in aggravating the digestive system. And when there is a big event like Comrades, as much as you are happy to go and you've done the training and you're feeling ready, there's still an element of stress related to, am I going to get to the race day healthy? Is everything going to go according to plan? There's a lot that goes on in the mind of an athlete. And so eating the wrong foods can just over-exaggerate the situation. The last thing you want to do is stress out your digestive system. No alcohol. Look, alcohol does prevent muscle protein synthesis. It prevents muscle repair. And the one thing you want to make sure when you get to race day is that you are 100% recovered from all the training and ready to take on the big day. Save alcohol for after the race. You've trained so hard, there's no need to overdo it. And if you really do like your beer and everyone says to me it's carbohydrate, still got alcohol in, then go with an alcohol-free. Okay, carbo loading was a big question. It was actually a very big question. No overeating. And I have to stress this. First of all, is carbo loading going to make a massive difference for a general athlete running Comrades? And the answer is not really. No, actually. Carbo loading is a science. There's a lot of different methods to do it. Some of the elite athletes will deplete their glycogen stores completely in the days prior to the big race by doing a lot of intensity sessions, lowering their carbohydrate intake, and just burning their glycogen stores. And then what they'll do is they'll top up their carbohydrate intake significantly. They'll eat a huge amount of carbs as they head towards race day, and then they'll top up their glycogen stores. But these are runners that are running 5.5 to 6 hours. So is it going to make a difference for them? It can, because it boils down to percentage gains for them. But for an average runner that's running for like a 7.5 hour silver or running anywhere between 9 and and 12 hours. It will not make a difference whatsoever. Your glycogen stores, what if you top them up an extra 300 calories and you're burning off 800 to 1,000 calories an hour over 10 hours? You really think it's going to make a big difference? Not at all. It's not going to make a difference at all. Okay, so there's no need to overdo it. The biggest threat is overeating and then landing up at race day overweight at a heavier weight than you trained at. And if you take a situation where an athlete did gain a kilogram of weight by the time he gets to the start line, because he just overdid it because the volume of training was dropping during the taper period, but his eating stayed the same. Then if you take a cadence of, let's say, a slow cadence of about 160, I would say, 80 steps a minute, talking about 1 kilogram per the left side per minute, 80 steps, 80 kilos, right foot, 80 kilos, 80 times 60 is 4.8 tons of force going through that body on an hourly basis. That will completely damage your rate because that's just 1 hour. Imagine 7, 8, 9 hours. So it's no point in overeating. It's not going to make a massive difference. You need to get to the race in good shape, in your same weight that you've been training at. You don't want to overeat. What you can do is you can lower your fat intake and you can increase the carbohydrate intake so that you still maintain a calorie balance, but you're not overeating. Okay, just remember a gram of fat is 9 calories as opposed to 4 calories for a carb. So if you drop 2 grams of fat, you can put in 4 grams of carbs, if that makes sense. Okay. Hydration is very important. Never arrive at race day dehydrated or even in a slight deficit of hydration. You want to be completely hydrated. I truly believe consuming around 30 to 40 milliliters of fluid per kilogram of body weight is a nice way to stay hydrated through the day. And there's a big sort of advocacy at the moment to mineral load prior to the event to maximize fluid pull through and absorption and to really to sort of harness your water store. So as you get closer to the event, to take in a hydration solution, which is high in sodium, would probably be advisable. So increasing salt intake closer to the event. And then also focusing on sleep, I think is very important. You don't want to sacrifice any sleep. Sleep equals recovery, sleep equals performance, sleep equals a stronger immune system. I don't believe you have to keep getting up at the early hours of the morning just because Comrades Day is at a certain time. The training's done, etc. Maximize sleep as much as possible. It will benefit you on race day. Okay, the 3 days leading into the event, keep it clean, reduce fiber intake. So there are a lot of people that are fiber intolerant. I'm actually one of those. So I do reduce fiber intake. What does that mean? I don't eat basmati brown rice. I eat white rice. I don't eat brown bread or whole wheat bread. I'll eat white bread. And so I make these changes in order to reduce my fiber intake. I don't eat cruciferous vegetables, which are high in fiber. I rather eat things like cucumber and asparagus and mushrooms, which are lower than sort of the broccolis and the cauliflowers, etc. So I just make these kind of changes in order to reduce fiber intake. Alcohol, I just mentioned again. Like I said, you can slightly up your carbohydrate intake, but then try and balance that with dropping the fat down. Protein is a target. And then mineral loading. I use 32 GR hydrate. You could drink 2 to 3 bottles a day. Don't drink a bottle before you go to bed at night. You'll run up and down to the toilet. Most important thing is that you finish a bottle like at 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Let it be pulled through and absorbed so that you're not going to run backwards and forwards to the toilet, and then focus on sleep. Early night, try and get your 8 hours if you can, or even more. Okay, the day before the race. Friday night, I always think a lot of people on Friday night, they go and they overeat. That's generally the pasta parties are. They go to bed late. It's socializing. And I'm like, Friday night to me is the most important sleep night before race because it's the one night that it's 2 days out. You can maximize your sleep. You can get to bed slightly earlier and you can wake up a lot later. You can really maximize your sleep because the night before the race is so difficult to sleep. Along with pre-race nerves and a whole lot of stuff going on in your mind, it's difficult to sleep. Some people can, some people can't. A lot of people can't. So I would say maximize your sleep on the Friday. Don't wake up Saturday morning early and like, I'm going to do pre-race activations. There's no need. Doesn't matter if you do them at 11 o'clock in the morning. It's not going to destroy or make or break your race. It's just a loosener. That's all it is. So sleep in later, and just maximize that sleep. Don't overeat. Definitely don't consume alcohol in the 24 hours before the race. Hydrate, mineral load for sure. And then when it comes to lunchtime, that's when I would look at increasing carbohydrate intake. So at lunchtime, increasing carb intake, that's what I would do. I don't do it at nighttime. I just don't feel there's a need to, because at nighttime the problem is that I need to sleep, and if I overeat dinner, it's going to overload my digestive system. It's going to elevate my metabolic rate. It's going to make it very difficult for me to fall asleep. And this is what happens with any person that eats a large amount before bedtime. You need to try and maximize your sleep as much as possible. So a small to medium-sized meal the night before is absolutely fine. People say to me, what do you eat the night before a race? Sometimes it's as simple as scrambled egg whites on white toast. It doesn't have to be complicated. A chicken breast with some white rice. Nothing hectic. They say, but you need the energy for your race tomorrow. I'm like, don't worry, because the morning of the race, that's where I'm going to maximize my energy intake. And that is the actual meal that counts for your race. And that's the day of the race. Okay. So on race day, pre-race meal, most important, never, ever skip it. So what kind of pre-race meals are we looking at? So what is a pre-race meal? High in carbohydrates for sure. Low in fat, low in fiber, nominal amount of protein that will help stabilize the blood glucose curve. And it will be taken up and utilized as a source of energy. So when should this meal be had? At least 2.5 hours before the race. If for some reason you can have it 3 or 4 hours before, that's fine. The further you're away from the race, the bigger the meal can be. The closer you are to the race, the smaller the meal needs to be, because the digestive system needs to process these nutrients. And the last thing you want is a heavy stomach at the start line, and now you've got to start running. Runners like to feel a certain level of emptiness and comfort. We don't like to feel full when we're running. So just make sure you don't overdo it. Depending on body weight, etc. I've actually got a chart on the pre-race meal page on our website. You can actually see suggested amount of servings and calories based on your weight and how long before the race. And that can be translated into any kind of a meal if you want to. Different kinds of meals. I mean, I use the pre-race meal, but there are lots of options. Some people like oats. You can add in some bit of protein, some banana, a teaspoon of peanut butter. Keep the fats low, keep the fiber low. I would go the high processed oats. I wouldn't go with like a steel cut or a rolled oats. I'd go with something that's more an instant, because it's more processed and the fiber content is a lot lower. Some athletes I know, they use oat flour as opposed to utilizing oats because they want to really mitigate the fiber intake. You could go with white bread and a bit of scrambled eggs. That's fine. You could have white bread with Nutella or honey or banana on it if you wanted to. That's also absolutely fine. You could have a shake. Some people like to have a shake. A pre-race meal can also be made as a shake, actually. It can be a hot or cold shake, or a porridge, hot or cold. So, it's very different for many people. When people say to me, I like full scrambled eggs or boiled eggs on toast, the problem is the fat content in the egg is around 45% of the total fat content. That fat, to be converted into a source of energy, it's very difficult to be converted. Okay, in the big scheme of things, you want quickly accessible energy, and overeating fat or overeating protein is not going to be easily converted into a source of energy when it's needed. So I would keep that down. I would rather have 5 boiled egg whites or 4 boiled egg whites with like 6 slices of white bread as an example, and then you could have 1 yolk. But I would try and keep it as low as possible, and not even 4. I would say maybe 2 or 3 boiled egg whites. Okay. Pre-race hydration. Okay, look, I love to have coffee before I race. Is it going to dehydrate me? No. I usually like to make a French press and I'll drink it. It is a form of hydration, but obviously caffeine, you need to be tolerant to utilizing caffeine. And then afterwards, I take that with my meal quite a few hours before, because I want to allow for time for the bladder to work. You really want your digestive system to work. You don't want to land up at Portaloos much, especially when you get there. So that's why, for me, the further out from the race, the better it is to actually eat. I prefer getting up earlier and eating a proper meal way before, and letting my stomach work and getting rid of all the fluid. And then slowly I could sip or top up on a little bit of energy as I get closer to the race line, but that would be very tiny amounts to top me up en route. Okay. Caffeine intake. Caffeine is beneficial at around 3 milligrams of caffeine to a kilogram of body weight. It helps free up a lot of FFAs or free fatty acids, which will be utilized as a source of energy during any endurance event. There's a combination of fat and glycogen that are being utilized during exercise. It's not a switch on off, but is like a bit of a shared energy source, and one will be dominant depending on the intensity at any particular moment in time. Okay. So if you weigh 60, 70 kgs, you're talking around close to 200 milligrams of caffeine intake a couple of hours, say like 2.5 to 4 hours before the race, in order to benefit from that caffeine intake. If you've never taken caffeine before, then don't try. Okay. Rather save it for during the race if you want to. And then I'll talk a little bit about caffeine ingestion during the race. Okay, so these are just rules of engagement. Make sure you've got 2 weeks now, just under, to plan your nutrition strategy. Write it out, put it on a piece of paper. Make sure you understand at what markers you're going to eat what. Don't say I'm gonna do something every 5 kilometers, because if you're running like 7 or 8 minutes a K, that's 35 to 40 minutes. Those speeds are too far apart. So in that case, you might say I need to do it every 4 kilometers or 3 kilometers or whatever it is, because it's a different pace. For an elite athlete that's running like 4 minutes a K, it's a different story. They can easily take in energy every 5K because they're going to hit those tables in 20 minutes. So it's really time-based. It's not pace or distance-based. A lot of people always focus on distance. I always see how much mileage somebody's run between January and Comrades. I'm like, what does that equate to time on the leg? Not necessarily, a guy could have run 1,500 Ks, and maybe it's like, I don't know, maybe it's 100 hours the guy ran. And another guy went and ran 800 Ks, and maybe also ran 100 hours. I'm just throwing that number there. It doesn't make sense from a mathematical point of view, but it also is about the time on the body and not necessarily just about the distance and the distance markers. Remember, nutrition is all about timing. Okay, it's very important. All right, I'm going to bring up the questions. Let's have a look at some of the questions that were brought up. That's that. Okay. And let me zoom into this. Just let me know you can. Oh, I don't even know if you can see this actually. Let me put up a new share. Share this document. There we go. Okay, let me just please. It was 150. Okay. I hope you can see that. I'm not sure how big your screens are. So carb loading I spoke about. One person mentioned groin pain. Is there time to recover? So, I mean, look, it's a very interesting question. Groin pain is usually, it can refer to a syndrome called Gilmore groin. It actually generally happens mostly in men as opposed to female athletes. And it actually comes from fatigued or weak glute muscles, and you get referral coming around to the front. And I've got to be completely honest with you, it can take many, many months to recover from an injury like that. Running is not going to help. A lot of strength training and a lot of rehab with a bio or a physio that understands, like Gilmore, for example, would be the route to go. I once suffered from it in a trail race, a 204-kilometer stage trail race in 2016. I had slight discomfort in the beginning, and by the time I ran my 4th stage, which was around 11 o'clock at night, it felt like somebody had taken a knife and shoved it straight through my groin. It was excruciating, and it took me 8 or 9 months of hectic strength training to recover properly from that. What did I learn? I learned, yes, you can run through the pain if your mind is tough. Was it worth it afterwards? not really. So we landed up with a good result. We actually took a third place in that race, but in the end, I had 9 months of hectic rehab to do to get it right. So is it worth it? Comrades is going to be there every year. I would say don't get FOMO. If you're injured, if you're ill, and you need to wait out another year, it means you've got a whole another year to train and prepare for it. You've got a nice cushion, and I wouldn't rush the race. Okay. Race for vegetarians, race feeding for vegetarians. I mean, race feeding for vegetarians is the same as like any other. Most products are actually vegan suitable unless they've got a whey protein in. But if you're looking at gels, etc., I mean, they're all pretty much vegan based. Um, and generally, I find that most vegans, I was a vegan once for a couple of years, but I developed such a severe fiber intolerance after I contracted COVID in 2020. I had to resort back to reducing fiber intake and going back to more of an animal-based diet. And the reason I did that was because I just couldn't eat foods without developing bloatedness. So sometimes you've got to listen to what the body's telling you, and you must mitigate any products, food types that actually play a detrimental impact to how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis. It's a process of elimination, and I would say that that's how you should treat it. Okay, don't take in things that are going to aggravate you. Pre-race meal I spoke about. Cramps and Comrades. Okay, I did mention excessive fluid loss is one of the main reasons for cramping. Let's talk about that a bit. I mentioned that overhydrating, because you're taking in only water, minimizes fluid pull through, and then that excessive fluid loss can lead to the onset of dehydration. Onset of dehydration is difficult because the blood thickens. It's very difficult to shuttle nutrients and to shuttle everything down through your vascular system. I mean, you've got vessels, hundreds of kilometers of it, and you need to feed the muscles oxygen. And to be quite honest, it's very difficult when you're completely dehydrated, and that can lead to the onset of cramping. So hydration is quite important. What I do recommend is actually taking in the form of salt early on. You can take in a nominal amount, maybe 200, 300 milligrams of sodium, additional to what you're consuming from a point of view of race nutrition, because that might just add another, let's say, 180 to 250 milligrams of sodium, which is a nominal amount. Some people take a lot more, and that definitely will help with fluid pull through. And if you find that you're really sweating a lot and you see a lot of salt on your skin and you feel and you can see that there's a lot more fluid loss, basically because of temperature, because of exertion, etc., you can increase that sodium intake. You can take more to help with more fluid pull through. So with me, I mean, I do use a Cramper Salt gel. I find that if I take one every 45 minutes in the beginning of a race, as the race wears on and it starts to get hot, I actually end up taking 2 an hour. I take one every 30 minutes. It's a hydration gel. It works very well for me. I've tried and tested it a lot. Unless there's a bottle of a rehydrate or hydrate or some kind of hydration solution that's en route, that's also another option for you. But salt is king for fluid pull through, and it's something that I would absolutely advocate. If you do get cramps, and prevention is always better than cure, that's why I always advocate hydrating properly and looking at a relevant amount of sodium intake. But if you do get cramps, obviously you're going to have to walk and stretch it out. It is painful. It is painful. If you get cramps in the adductor area, definitely that's mainly possibly fluid hydration. I've seen that with most athletes. Adductor pain is fluid hydration. The bigger muscles start to really give way, especially like around the quad area, hamstrings. You could try then taking in a cramp stop. Our Cramper Salt has got a neuromuscular trigger, which can ease and stop cramping. But I would walk through the water tables, take on nutrition, take on salt, and maybe jog to the next and see how you're feeling. And hopefully with more salt intake and more fluid intake, it will start to dissipate more and more. Those run walk strategies are really brilliant strategies. I think that, if you walk through a table, it's not really going to make a big difference in your overall time. Most important, take on nutrition, take on hydration, take the time to loosen, to stretch out, and then to carry on. And I think you'll have a much better overall race. Even elite athletes do walkthroughs. Okay. So that's from a cramping point of view. Nutrition strategy I've touched on. We have got a fueling guide. I'll put it actually in the chat over here. And then carb loading I've spoken about. nutrition intake during running I've spoken about. Does adjusting cadence and strides help with running hills, faster pace, shorter strides? I love that. I advocate that to runners. Obviously, when you're running down a hill, there's way more impact because the drop of the foot down that hill, okay, is going to cause a a a pushback. For every, Newton's the third law of force. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the foot goes down, creates a force on the ground. The force goes back through the body, creates a stress on your limbs. Okay. How do you lessen the stress? Well, if you have a big stride length and you drop, I mean, if you ever look at this angle, the drop is way more. It could be a centimeter or two more just based that your stride length is actually too big. So the impact will be bigger when the foot lands. So shortening the stride length and shuffling down a hill will definitely reduce the load on the limbs. And so it is something that I advocate when running down a hill is to try and like really shorten the stride length, maybe shuffle a little bit down, especially those steep downhills, because if you run a steep downhill and the stride length is quite big, you're going to put a massive impact on the limbs. And that can lead to the onset of muscle fatigue and eventually the onset of cramping, which is another reason for cramping, is an overloaded muscle. Okay. So cramp assault, I spoke about gels on the day. Look, I would take one probably 10, 15 minutes before the start. And then I would start fueling 20 minutes in. If you don't like one flavor, change flavors. If you don't like one product, mix products not together, but go from one product to another product. I like one particular product, but I'll switch flavors so that I can keep with the same nutrition strategy and I don't get tired of the flavor. The other thing is you can always rinse your mouth out with water. It's quite easy. Sugar doesn't cause cramping, by the way. But if you overload on sugar and you don't hydrate enough, then it could lead to dehydration, and that can lead to cramping. But consuming carbohydrates definitely doesn't actually cause cramping. Unless it's stomach cramping, then maybe you've got a sensitivity to fructose or glucose at a certain portion. What can I use to sustain my energy through 85 Ks? I've spoken about that. Up run, Comrades marathon. Look, I would suggest first of all, speak to people that have done this before. Look at pacing charts to try and help you. You do need to understand what your ability is, what your threshold paces are, and what you're capable of doing. I think the first 50 Ks of an up run is really difficult because that's where all the hills are. So I think you do need to pace yourself in the first 40, 50 kilometers. And once you pass that mark and you're strong, you'll have an awesome day out. But if you get to that 50K mark and you're feeling flat because you've overpaced yourself, I think that's going to be a miserable day out. So fuel properly, pace properly in the beginning, and then, that will set you up for a really good finish. Carb loading I spoke about. You can take caffeine shots before or during the race. Okay, let me just explain to you how caffeine works. Caffeine reaches peak concentration levels in around 20 minutes. So if you take a caffeine gel and it does cause a rise in caffeine concentration levels, at 60 minutes they will drop. And when it drops, that's that feel good and then feel bad. Because caffeine does help lower the rate of perceived effort. It does make you feel a little bit better. So once you start taking caffeine, you cannot stop taking caffeine. You've got to keep taking it. You've got to keep taking it in under an hour. So if I start taking a G shot and I've got 5 hours to go, I better make sure I've got another 5 G shots on me for every single, maybe 55 minutes under the hour that I'm going to take it. So just remember, if you're going to take caffeine, keep taking caffeine. Coke water, remember Coke does have caffeine in it. Caffeine can make you feel good. If you do take a caffeinated drink like a Coca-Cola or something like that, it's going to be very difficult if you don't keep taking caffeine because you can hit it down. And if some of you have gone that feeling route and you felt downers, I think that can impact you. At Expo, I will be at the Discam and the 32GR stand. They're next to each other. More than happy to help you. I just want people to get to Comrades finish line with a smile on their face. So whatever you need, just let me know and I'll assist you in making sure that you're set for race day. Even if you don't use 32GR products and you want to talk to me, I'm more than happy to help you. Okay. It's all about education and making sure that you guys get the best out. if you're in a tapering period, we don't just reduce the intake of carbs, we also reduce the fat intake because, possibly I was burning off 2,500 calories a day. And now I'm only burning off maybe at this stage 2,000 a day. And then maybe the week before it's toned down even more, 1,800 a day. So protein for me is a target. And the other macronutrients, which is the fat and the carbs, those need to come down and fall in line. So the less you train, the less you're burning off, the less you eat. The more you train, the more you eat. And it's the balancing act between them. If you're not sure, use an app, plug in the meals, and just check, what your intake is on a day-to-day basis. If you can't get hold of pasta, pasta is not the be-all and end-all. White bread, white rice, white potato, boiled, steamed. You can even have oats. It doesn't matter. It's not that you have to eat pasta the day before a race. It's just been a very inexpensive bulk carbohydrate that a lot of people have been consuming for years. It's not a necessity. Like I said, I've scrambled egg whites on toast the night before. And the day before, I generally have white rice, maybe the chicken breast or something light. I don't go overboard. Okay. Essential supplements. That could be a good one. Okay, let me talk about a few supplements that I think are quite beneficial. We spoke about sleep being very beneficial. What helps us sleep? Magnesium, absolutely. I would be dosing on magnesium regardless. I don't think we get enough magnesium in water. So taking a really good magnesium tablet, and I would say that like a magnesium L-threonate or a glycinate or citrate, maybe in that order, I would say those are the best magnesiums. You take it at night before you go to sleep. It does have a calming effect on the nervous system. It can give you a better night's sleep. If you're still battling with sleep, you could try L-theanine with 5-HTP, even ashwagandha. And if really you want to add something, you could go with a 3 to 5 milligram dose of melatonin. I mean, that's like a sleep concoction. And will the magnesium have a benefit on rest day? Yeah, it could. I mean, if you boost your magnesium stores a little, it can make a bit of a difference. Okay. Especially if you have a deficit. I mean, most people that have run red cell magnesium tests on, they don't necessarily have a deficit, but there's no harm in boosting those levels. Immune system, you want to be healthy. So things like vitamin D. I mean, I advocate a 5,000 IU. I take it daily. I take omega-3s. It does help reduce inflammation, helps with recovery, helps with cardiovascular health. Vitamin C is very good for collagen fiber production as well as immunity. It's a good antioxidant, so even that would be good. I mean, my daily go-to is I use the 32 GI Immunize, and that's got vitamin C, vitamin Bs, and it's got zinc in. Zinc is brilliant as for gut health and an antibacterial. And then it's got Wellmune in, which I find it just helps fight off infections a lot more rapid. So, if you're going to get an illness, it will help you recover from that illness a lot quicker. It primes neutrophils, infection-fighting cells, to move a little bit more rapidly around the body and fight these pathogens. Things that are too late to take. I mean, creatine is definitely a brilliant source of a performance enhancer, a natural performance enhancer, but you would need to dose in it for quite a number of, like many weeks and months to try and really reap a benefit. I do advocate 5 grams a day. Even to endurance athletes, you won't retain a lot of water, but it will have a benefit as far as pace and power goes. Things like beta-alanine as well, you need to take for an 8-week period. So that's not going to really make a big difference in a day. But certain things like beetroot extracts, vasodilators, betaine, and then caffeine, those are supplements that can make a difference on the actual day. Okay, so that's from a supplement point of view. I have prepared a sort of nutrition timetable based on certain products for race day. I'll put the link in the chat, but even better, we'll send it out to all of you that are registered for the session. I'll make sure that it's sent out, the link to that fueling guide and race day guide. So sleep, I've just given some guidance on natural supplementation. I think those are really, really good, and I do advocate them to athletes that I work with that battle with sleep. Obviously, if you still have got severe sleep disturbances, you could look at things like adding in there like a viral rescue remedy. But if that doesn't work, then maybe asking the physician to prescribe a circadian, which is a higher dosage of melatonin, could work for you. But just make sure the dosage is suitable to you, because you don't want to wake up feeling groggy the next day. And even though they make recommended dosages, it impacts everybody differently. And a physician would have to guide you on that based on your weight, based on certain things. I once took circadian actually many, many years ago. They gave me the lowest possible dose, and I woke up the next morning feeling like I'd been drugged. It was crazy. So I stopped taking it completely because I didn't like that feeling. So you're just going to make sure. And the doctor was shocked, saying like it's not possible. I gave you the lowest possible dose. It's not possible. The impact of everybody is very different. I don't generally take meds, so when I do, it just hits me like crazy. I'm very sensitive, and a lot of athletes are more highly sensitized to medication than couch potatoes. Their bodies are very sensitive. Um, okay. Difference between Endure and Recover. Endure is a pure carbohydrate drink. Recover is a carb and protein combination. The bars, the gummy sweets are pure carbs. The race bars are also carb protein combination. And the gels, the snap gels are basically a pure carb intake, the snap gels, but the Race Pro is a carb slash small protein intake. The Race Pro and the Race Pro gels were actually designed around Comrades run. We just found that protein and carbohydrate intake along the route was just it worked so well, even at elite level. So that's why we put it to market. Okay. Strong finish again. Fueling correctly in the beginning, pacing yourself in the beginning. That gives you a strong finish. It's amazing how many runners don't believe they can ever do a negative split marathon. But when they do, they're like, oh my God, I did a negative split marathon. I never thought ever in a million years. It's actually way better to run a negative split marathon than it is to try and build up a cushion and then try and hold that pace to finish stronger. There's no ways you're not going to do it. So you really do have to pace yourself in the ultra. You've got to pace yourself quite early on. There might be a little bit of cushioning build up in a race like Comrades, because obviously the level of fatigue does grow a little bit, which can reduce performance as the race gets longer. I'm not saying negative split Comrades by any means, but it's really important to pace yourself early on. Okay. I'm not a fan of carb loading unless you're like a elite athlete that's going to benefit. You need rocket fuel for a sprint finish or whatever it is. So again, starting your nutrition, it's not about kilometers. I'd say 20 minutes in, start your nutrition. When can we take the G-shot during the race? I did mention once you start taking, you cannot stop taking it. Okay. Right, that's the questions. Let me see what was in the chat. Okay. I've got here people said they can't hear me. I hope that you could. All right. So remember, balancing a caffeine shot with gels, you could take them together. Because a caffeine shot has got no energy. It's like got 4 calories. It's got like 1 gram of carbs. The gel's got 22 grams of carbs. So you could take them together or you could separate them. Actually, it's not going to make a difference. Make sure that you're just taking some fluid with it. That's the most important thing. Okay. Protein really depends on if you're taking the Race Pro gel and you're taking it consistently, you wouldn't need to take in a big protein source because that's already got a certain amount of protein in with the carbs, and you would take it regularly. A lot of people take Recover. They take 2 scoops as opposed to 3, so that there's a portion of protein which is not an overload in the system. And sorry, 2 scoops instead of 4, and that will ensure a nice normal amount of carbs and protein en route, and that would be fine. The other option is you could have a protein bar, but just make sure you've tried and tested these. I wouldn't have a whole bar, but I'd have a half a bar, because like our bars have got 20 grams of protein, so I'd have one that's maybe got 10 grams of protein, as an example, and then have the next one maybe 2 hours later. If you are on the Race Pro gel, because it is a very much a liquid gel, there's a lot of water in it. It's not like a thick gel. The guys are asking, do I need to hydrate separately? You still need to hydrate. You might not need to take in as much fluid, but a little amount here or there, because that gel is about 50%. So you still need to take in. Remember, you're not going to take the whole gel at once. And that whole gel is like 300 calories. So the thing is that if you have a third, and you're going to finish it over an hour, an entire gel, I would still add in like at least, I mean, maybe early on, 1.5 water sachets, and then as you go through the race, maybe 2 water sachets or more an hour, depending on how you're doing. And I would actually add in a little bit more sodium if it's very, very hot. Can you just take 32 GR recover? I think it'll be heavy because of the amount of protein in there. I would say that Race Pro is a much better option than the recover if you're looking at only taking a single source fueling. Can you take 32 GR race meal during the race? Yes, you can. It is a carbohydrate. It's a very high carb. I once ran out of product when I was overseas, and all I had was pre-race meal, and I put it in my water bottles on my bike, and I used it as a carbohydrate mix, and it worked very well. So yes, you can. Anything that's higher carb and sort of low on the fiber, nominal amount of protein, low fat side, I think would be great. The minute the protein content's too high, you've got to be very careful. If you take high sugar intake and you're cramping, like I said, it could be reverse pull of fluid, you're dehydrated, and it's triggering the cramping. You need to increase your fluid intake as you increase your energy intake because you don't want that concentrate sitting in your gut. You need to try and help pull it through. And the way to do that is create like an osmotic pressure, an even pressure between externally where the blood's sitting, and then internally to the gut. If there's an even pressure, there's an even pull through. If the one pressure is greater than the other, you're going to get a completely different pull through towards the lower pressure side. So you've got to be very careful of that. Okay. Sugar is a 1-to-1 glucose to fructose ratio. Just remember that. So is it a bad carbohydrate source? Not really. If you're eating 60 grams an hour, sugar will be fine. You can take in honey if you've got 60 grams per hour. If you go more than 60 grams an hour, then it could be a problem because you're going to exceed the 30-gram fructose amount per hour. And then in that case, maybe you want to go to a higher glucose intake, lower fructose intake. So then you'd like to look at a different combination. So it really does depend on the fructose to glucose ratio. Okay. I can't have fizzy drinks. Look, I can't have fizzy drinks either. So unfortunately, en route, there is not Energate, if that's what you take. Thirsty has got isotonic drinks en route, and I don't think they're fizzy, but, and I don't know the exact details of the drink. I'd have to look it up. But cream soda does not have any caffeine in. It's just sugar and fizzy water and a lot of other chemical compounds. The Race Pro gel container is quite thick. So what I do is, let me actually show you. Just give me a sec. I'll bring one of these pouches. You can get them at Sportsman's Warehouse, and you can also get them from us. I'm going to take some down to Comrades as well. But I think it's an absolutely brilliant feed for running, especially if you've got a waist belt. So I don't know if you can actually see this. It's a soft flask with a bite valve. I can fit 2.5 to 3 Race Pro gels in this small little sachet. Shove it in my pocket. I mean, that gives me about 4 hours of energy. I stick one in the back race belt. I've got 8 hours of energy. All I do is there's a marking table at the back, and I know exactly how much I need to consume per hour. Separately, I take my hydration. I think this is the best way to carry any kind of nutrition. This is my dispenser, and it works extremely well. At Comrades, we are going to have Race Pro gel caps. The new caps, we haven't managed to do our first batch of them. They are screw tops, but we are switching to a flick top. I'm going to take some flick tops down, so if people want, they can take the screw top off and put the flick top up, so they can just flick it, squeeze it, and then clip it down again. That's a new innovation that we're putting into the Race Pro gels. Running with a bottle of hydrate all the time. Can I use up to 3 hydrate tablets? Yeah, absolutely. You absolutely can. You can even make a concentrate of hydrate, even in like a sachet like this, a soft glass like that. And every time you sip the hydrate, which will be quite sweet though, because it's got a lot of concentrate in, it's high sodium, you could actually take water separately to that because the combination of the water and the sodium intake, well, obviously it will mix together. Remember, it's not like you have to take the sodium and with that particular product. It's about how do you combine it with the fluid intake to maximize the fluid pull through. And that's really the key. Um, yes, so very important. 32 GRI tables on where we've got product en route. Let me have a look here. I was sent this. I just want to give me one step. Just trying to look where it is. If not, we'll send it out to the database. No, I'm not sure. I will definitely send it out to you guys. We'll put it in an email going forwards. One thing I did want to say is that the 32 GI Running Club, and some of you might have heard, they actually are providing seconding tables en route, 4 of them, which are very well stocked, with product that's more than what's provided for Comrades. And the club chairman's agreed that because it's costly to them, but he's agreed that for a price, he's willing to second other runners as well. So if you want to take advantage of that, you can email me and I'll forward you to the club chair, and that would be able to assist you. And I know that their tables are spread quite nicely. I think as far as our tables with the Race Pro bars go, if I'm not mistaken, I think they like at 65, 70, 74, and then 79 kilometers, but I do need to double check that. I would have liked it a little bit earlier on, but then there obviously is conflict with a lot of the other big sponsors like the Green Mile, etc. And so we just had to fit in where we could, where Comrades wanted us to fit in. The gels are being put into the goodie bags. That's where they've decided to utilize the gels for the Comrades runners. Um, if there are leftovers, there possibly will be also en route. I think there will be leftovers in natural pack. So I'm not sure, but once Comrades lets us know, then I will be able to let you know for sure. Um, so somebody mentioned the concentrate of the race for powder. Look, you can do that. I just think it's a little bit heavier, a little bit more hygroscopic than the gel, because the gel's made with liquids. So I think it's just maybe a little bit easier on the stomach. But I've raced with the drink concentrate before. I actually did an entire half Ironman just with the drink concentrate, and it worked extremely well for me. I had no issues whatsoever between the bike and the run. It was absolutely perfect. So it does work. It absolutely does work. Um, um, combat inflammation in the knees before race day. Usually, patella tendinopathies or tendonitis, or if it's runner's knee or whatever it is usually a cause of fatigue or overloaded quad muscles and refers down to the tendons. I would foam roll the quads. I would stretch the quads. I'd probably get some needling. I'd probably go to somebody just to check. Um, I would probably just check what we can do there. And then as far as like if it's really, really painful, you might want to go to a physician and let them prescribe you an anti-inflammatory. Something like a Zephyr 8 milligram or maybe a Coxia 120 would be a good anti-inflam to try and help settle it. But I wouldn't look at taking these on race day. Please don't go and engage in anti-inflammatories on race day. It's like firing a freaking, it's like playing Russian roulette, and you just don't know. I've had athletes that have died, even though they've taken it for many years and they say it works. One day, the bullet exited the chamber. So just don't play that game. Stress on the kidneys. You just never know when it's going to happen. So best thing is you're 2 weeks out. Rather get it sorted now, like right now, and don't leave it to the week before. Make an appointment with a physician. Let them check it out. A sports physician would be able to have a look. Um, I don't think I would advocate cortisone because it does run the risk of tendon issues long term. So I think if you can reduce the inflammation by like a mild anti-inflammatory, maybe that's the best way to go. And then obviously, like I said, getting those quads loose as much as possible. Yeah, look, slow mag I think is fine. Um, I think that there's other better magnesiums on the market. I'm not knocking the brand. I just bioavailability of magnesium is so important. Digestive acids definitely destroy most of the magnesium that enters the stomach, and you want it to bypass. So yes, an enteric-coated tablet would be the way to go. None of these fizzies and none of these like powdered tablets, because when they open up and those ingredients are exposed to stomach acid, it's gone. There's no bioavailability. So they need to be they need to bypass the higher acid environment in the gastrointestinal area and go much lower down. And when they release there, you'll get a much better absorption rate of magnesium. I hope that helps. I don't think magnesium really prevents cramping. Generally, it's fluid loss and sodium is the key, if you ask me. Magnesium is not really the big one. Okay, so yeah, so that's it. I think that if there's anything further, please just you can contact me. I did put up my email address. I'll just share it again with you over here. You can send an email to coach@32gr.com. And if there is any questions, if you're interested in looking at some tables or systems en route, then just chat to us, and we can go from there. And I wish you all a pleasant 2 weeks. Try focus on sleep. Try stay healthy. Avoid crowded gyms. Avoid running in cold weather and putting stress on your body. And by the way, ice baths, they're not really that great. I got asked the question as well. They actually they downregulate anabolic signaling. They prevent muscle protein synthesis. They don't allow for muscle recovery. If you need to reduce inflammation, ice by all means can help reduce inflammation. But I think a targeted approach to icing is way better. And not to just jump into a full ice bath. You're trying to maximize muscle recovery at this stage. I've run a lot of blood tests on athletes, and I see very elevated CK levels, which show a severe amount of muscle damage since their long run. Still hasn't recovered. A lot of athletes still have very elevated CK. The last thing you want is to get to Comrades with very elevated CK. I would say that stimulating circulation, probably heat, light massage, all these things are probably way better in the steps towards approaching race day. So that's it. I hope that was valuable, and I will see you at Comrades. Just stay healthy, most important, and don't do anything stupid beforehand that could risk your Comrades race. Have a good evening, or I hope that was good.